Hello friends. Tonight we are not going to a grand European ball or a smoky political salon. Our journey is to a much quieter and in many ways more complex place. We are traveling to the damp, grey and very cold world of 18th century England to follow a person with one of the most stressful and surprisingly technical jobs of the era. The professional pineapple grower. This is a story of absurd ambition, profound patience, and the quest to create a tiny artificial sun in a world of fog and rain. The story is a slow burn, in every sense of the word. In fact, you might not survive this without falling into a state of deep, warm relaxation. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet way of letting me know you appreciate these stories. And as is our tradition, I invite you to leave a comment, letting me know the time and the place where you've tuned in from tonight. It's always a comfort to know we are all sharing this quiet moment from all corners of the sleeping world. Now, turn down the lights, maybe put on a fan for some gentle background noise, and let's begin our journey for tonight. Your world is not one of gilded drawing rooms and silk-covered cushions. Your world is one of damp tweed, of rich, dark soil under your fingernails, and the constant, familiar smell of wet leaves. You are the head gardener of a large, prosperous estate in the English countryside. It is a position of immense prestige. You are not just a man who digs, you are a scientist, an artist, a general commanding an army of under-gardeners, and a magician who coaxes peaches to grow on cold stone walls and grapes to ripen under a sky that is, for at least 10 months of the year, the color of a slate roof. Your life is a rhythm of seasons, of pruning and planting, of observing the subtle shifts in the wind and the quality of the light. But today that rhythm is broken. A message has arrived from the great house. His lordship the Earl wishes to see you, immediately. You wipe your hands on a piece of rough sacking, pull on your best waistcoat, and walk from the familiar, earthy chaos of the potting sheds towards the grand, symmetrical silence of the main hall. You are led into the library, a room that always makes you slightly uncomfortable. It is too warm, too dry. The air smells of old leather, beeswax polish, and the faint, sweet smoke of a peat fire. His lordship is not looking at his ledgers. He is standing by a window, looking out over the perfectly manicured lawns. The very lawns that you are responsible for. But he is not admiring your work. He is holding something. He turns and he smiles. "Mr. Harkness," he says, his voice quiet, "we have a new project." He gestures to the large mahogany desk and you see it. At first, you are not sure what it is. It is a fruit, certainly, but it is unlike any fruit you have ever seen. It is a monster. A geometric marvel of interlocking hexagonal scales, a deep bronzed gold and green. It is topped with a crown of sharp, stiff, green-blue blades that look almost like a weapon. The air around it, even in this large, drafty room, is thick with a perfume so sweet and so powerful it makes your head swim. It smells of sunshine and sugar and a place you cannot possibly imagine. "It is a pineapple," the Earl says, as if he is speaking of a common apple. "I had a taste of one at a dinner in London, a truly remarkable thing." This is the great historical fact of your time. The pineapple is the ultimate status symbol. In the 1700s, this single fruit, imported from the West Indies or the American colonies, is the very definition of wealth and power. To simply possess one, not even to eat it, but just to display it as the centerpiece of a dinner party, is a declaration that you are at the pinnacle of society. A single perfect fruit can cost the equivalent of a new carriage, or a skilled craftsman's entire yearly wage. The Earl picks up the strange, heavy object. The ones that arrive on the ships, he says, his nose wrinkling slightly, are imperfect. They take months to cross the ocean. They are half rotted by the time they land. What I want, Mr. Harkness, is to serve one to my guests that is fresh. He looks at you. The expectation in his eyes is as heavy and solid as the desk between you. "I want you to grow them," he says, "here." A cold stone of impossibility settles in your stomach. You are in England. It is a land of gentle hills, of persistent drizzle, of frosts that can last until May. The fruit in his hand is a product of the tropics, a place your mind can only conjure as a sun-drenched, humid hell. To ask you to grow this here is like asking you to build a small working volcano in the rose garden. It is absurd. But you are the best gardener in the county. Your reputation, your livelihood, and the pride of this entire estate depend on your ability to conquer the English climate. You do not say impossible. It will be complex, my lord, you say, your voice perfectly neutral. Of course, he says, delighted. I have been told it is the most difficult thing a gardener can attempt. That is why you shall do it. Spare no expense. Build whatever you must. I want a pineapple grown on my land within 2 years. Some cultural historians argue that this obsession, this pineapple fever that gripped the 18th century aristocracy, was not really about the taste of the fruit at all. It was an emblem of the Enlightenment, a symbol of man's newfound power through science and engineering to impose his will upon nature. To grow a pineapple in the freezing English damp was to prove you had conquered the very climate itself. You were not just a gardener, you were a master of the universe. And now this impossible, universe-mastering task is yours. You look at the specimen on his desk. You can see what he means about the journey. The fruit, for all its aromatic glory, is dying. The base is a soft, bruised brown, and the sweet smell of sunshine is tinged with the faintest, sharp tang of fermentation. This is the strange and surprising detail of the pineapple trade. The vast majority of these expensive, rotting fruits were not even eaten. They were rented. A wealthy host would rent a pineapple for an evening, display it to his astonished guests, and then carefully return it to the fruiterer the next day, who would rent it to another party, and another, until it collapsed into an undignified puddle of rot. His lordship wants to eat one. He wants to casually slice into a fresh, perfect specimen grown by his own hand, or rather, by yours. You nod slowly. Yes, my lord, I will begin at once. You bow, and you walk out of the warm, dry library, back into the familiar, damp chill of the English afternoon. The sky is a uniform sheet of grey. A light, cold drizzle begins to fall. Your mind is not on the roses or the lawns. Your mind is already turning over the practicalities of a single, monumental problem. How, in God's name, do you build a tiny, functional piece of the Caribbean in the middle of a cold, wet English field? You walk back to your domain. The drizzle has settled into a determined, soaking rain, and the air is heavy with the smell of wet earth and the sharp green scent of box hedges. Your small stone-built office, attached to the potting sheds, is your true sanctuary. You light a tallow candle, the flames sputtering in the damp air, and sit at your scarred wooden desk. The grand, impossible request from the Earl settles around you. He wants a piece of the sun. In England. Your first task is not to dig, but to read. You are a literate man, a professional, and your small shelf of books is your most valuable asset. You pull down a heavy, leather-bound volume, The Gardener's Calendar by Philip Miller, the most respected authority of your time. You also have a small collection of pamphlets and papers, technical drawings traded with other head gardeners at county fairs. You are not the very first person to attempt this madness. The Dutch, masters of glass and heat, have been experimenting for decades. This is where you find the first glimmer of a solution. You realize, as you study the cross-section diagrams by candlelight, that you are not being asked to build a greenhouse. A greenhouse is a simple glass room, a conservatory designed to protect delicate plants from frost. It is a passive, gentle structure. What you must build is something far more aggressive, more industrial. You are building a machine. The proper term for it, you learn, is a pinery or a pinery pit. The diagrams are complex, but the principle is clear. You are not building a house on the earth, you are building a structure into the earth. The entire building will be sunk several feet into the ground to benefit from the earth's natural, stable warmth, leaving only its glass roof exposed to the hostile sky. It is less a house and more a sophisticated, heated trench. The next morning, you gather your team of undergardeners. You choose a site, the most perfect site on the entire estate. A gentle slope, facing precisely south, with a tall, thick yew hedge to the north that will act as a windbreak against the freezing gales. Then you begin to dig. Your men, accustomed to the shallow work of planting beds, are now tasked with a major excavation. They dig a vast rectangular pit, 8 feet deep, lined with heavy timber to stop the damp soil from collapsing. It is slow, muddy, back-breaking work. It rains, of course. It always rains. Your grand project begins as a large rectangular puddle of mud. While they dig, you meet with the estate's master bricklayer. You show him your diagrams. A thick, solid brick wall, 10 feet high, must be built on the north side of the pit. This wall will not only block the wind, but will also act as a heat sink, absorbing any weak sunlight during the day and radiating it back at night. Along the front, south-facing edge of the pit, a low brick wall will be built to hold the most expensive component of all, the glass. And the glass, this is the true measure of his lordship's wealth. Glass in the 18th century is fantastically expensive. The Crown has imposed a heavy tax on it, calculated by weight, which makes building anything larger than a small window a declaration of extreme privilege. To build an entire roof of it is an act of almost vulgar opulence. Some historians suggest this conspicuous consumption was the entire point. The pineapple was just the living trophy at the end of a long, expensive performance of wealth. But the design is not just a flat roof. Your diagrams show that the glass must be installed at a very precise, steep angle. Your mathematical calculations, scribbled on a piece of slate, confirm that an angle of 45 degrees is optimal. This is a crucial piece of engineering. The low winter sun, which spends most of its time skimming the southern horizon, will strike this steep glass not at a glancing angle, but almost directly, maximizing every precious watery ray of light it can trap. The bricklayers finished their work. Your men have finished the digging. You now have a structure that looks like a sunken open-air tomb or a small, strange amphitheater. Its brick walls facing a deep, empty pit of earth. Now the carts from London arrive, groaning under the weight of the precious cargo. The glass is here. You oversee the unpacking of the heavy wooden frames with a heart full of dread. Each pane is crown glass, spun into a disc and then cut. It is full of imperfections, wobbles, and greenish bubbles, but it is the best that money can buy. The glaziers, specialists from the city, get to work, fixing the frames to the brickwork, their hammers tapping softly. A single crack, a single mishit nail, would be a disaster costing more than your yearly salary. After a week, it is done. You stand before your palace of glass. It is a beautiful, strange and silent thing. It crouches low to the ground, its steeply angled roof of glass aimed at the southern sky like a giant, hopeful trap. You open the small wooden door on the side and step inside for the first time. The air is still, cut off from the wind. The smell is of damp, newly laid mortar and the deep, cold scent of the excavated earth. The light inside is pale and watery. It is a magnificent, perfectly engineered and completely cold glass box. You have trapped the sun, but the English sun has no warmth to give. The Earl wants a piece of the Caribbean, which is a place of constant sweltering heat. Your glass palace is a masterpiece of passive solar design, but it has no engine. It has no fire. You stand in the center, looking down into the deep, yawning trenches you have dug inside the structure. These are the pits. They are empty, dark, and waiting. The glass is only the skin of the beast. The heart of the machine, the secret to creating a tropical summer in the middle of a freezing winter, lies in what you are about to put into these pits. And as you contemplate the solution, you realize the air in your perfect glass palace is about to become very fragrant. You stand in your newly built glass palace, and the cold is absolute. The pale, watery sunlight of an English afternoon offers no warmth, only illumination. You have built a perfect, beautiful, and expensive trap for a sun that has no heat to give. A conventional fire is out of the question. A coal or wood fire would be uncontrollable. a dry heat that would scorch the delicate tropical leaves, and the soot would coat the precious glass, blocking what little light you have. No, you cannot use a fire. You must create a fever. You need a source of heat that is constant, gentle, controllable, and most importantly, damp. You need the living, breathing heat of the tropics, a heat that rises from the earth itself. And this is where the true, secret, and deeply unglamorous alchemy of your profession begins. Your journey to find this secret fire does not lead you to a coal merchant or a woodcutter. It leads you and a team of your strongest undergardeners to the local tannery, located a necessary and pungent distance downwind from the village. This is the smelliest place in the county, a place of raw, scraped hides, pits of caustic lime, and an overwhelming, eye-watering stench of ammonia and decay. But you are not here for leather, you are here for the tannery's waste. You are here for the tan. This is the historical term for the great, soaking wet piles of oak bark chips that have been used to tan the leather. After the tannins have been leached from them, the bark chips are a useless, sodden refuse to the tanner. To you, they are the key to the Caribbean. They are a slow-burning biological fuel. Your men, their faces grim, hold rags over their noses as they fork tons of this steaming, acidic-smelling waste into the estate's carts. It is a heavy, dirty, and fragrant job. But the tan alone is not enough. It is the fuel, but you need an igniter. Your next stop is the estate's stables, the source of the second and even more vital ingredient. You do not want the old, dry, well-rotted compost from the midden heap. That is for the mushroom beds. For this, you need the newest, freshest, strongest horse manure, still steaming from the stalls, rich with nitrogen and the vibrant, microscopic life that will spark your engine. Your undergardeners, already fragrant from the tannery, now begin the task of wheeling barrow after barrow of this pungent, steaming gold. Their silence is one of profound, dignified suffering. This is the true, hidden cost of 18th century luxury. While his lordship sips fine wine in the library, your men are wading ankle-deep in the raw materials of his ambition. Now, you return to the pinery. The stage is set. The deep, 8-foot-deep, brick-lined pits inside the glasshouse are empty and waiting. You are no longer a gardener. You are a master of fermentation, a conductor of an orchestra of microbes. You direct your men, and the work begins. First, a thick layer of the fresh, steaming horse manure is thrown into the bottom of the pit. This is the activator. Your men get in, treading it down with their heavy boots until it is a compacted 2-foot-thick layer. The air inside the glasshouse immediately becomes thick and sharp with the smell of ammonia. Next comes the tan. You lay a 2-foot layer of the wet, heavy oak bark on top of the manure. Then another layer of manure, and another layer of tan until the great pit is almost full. You are building a giant subterranean layer cake, a biological furnace. Some agricultural historians still argue that the Age of Reason and its horticultural triumphs were powered less by new science and more by this ancient, almost forgotten mastery of hotbeds complex. Sensory science of managing decomposition. This combination of carbon-rich tan and nitrogen-rich manure will, as it begins to decay, generate a phenomenal and, crucially, a consistent heat. The heat from this slow, living combustion will be steady, reliable, and it will last for months. Finally, with the pits full of this volatile, steaming mixture, you add the final layer. A thick, 1-foot-deep bed of the finest, richest, sieved topsoil is laid over the top of the tan. This is the soil in which the pineapples will actually grow. They will be perched directly on top of this invisible subterranean fire. You and your men evacuate the pinery, closing the heavy wooden door on your strange, smelly, and very expensive science experiment. You leave the biological engine to ignite. You wait 3 days. The anxiety is palpable. You do not sleep well. You are haunted by the fear of failure, of the pile simply sitting there, cold and inert, or of it becoming too hot, an uncontrollable fire. On the 3rd morning, you walk to the pinery alone in the cold dawn. You place your hand on the door. You open it. A wave of heat, as real and as present as a physical body, hits you in the face. It is not the dry, scorching heat of a fireplace. It is a soft, damp, living warmth. The air is thick with humidity, and the inside of the glass roof is completely fogged over, dripping with condensation. The smell of ammonia has faded, replaced by a deep, earthy, mushroom-like scent of active, working decay. You have done it. You have trapped a living, breathing fever. You plunge a soil thermometer, a new and expensive device, deep into the bed. You watch the mercury climb. It stabilizes at a perfect tropical temperature. You then take your bare hand and push it deep into the dark, rich soil. The warmth envelops your skin. It is the steady, perfect, gentle heat of a tropical summer. You have created a tiny, functional, and very fragrant piece of the West Indies, all powered by industrial waste and horse manure. The engine is running. The glass palace finally has its fire. Your glass palace is alive. The subterranean fire you built from bark and manure has stabilized, and the air inside the pinery is a constant, humid 80 degrees, even as a thin, cold rain streaks the glass outside. The engine is running, the stage is set, but your theatre is empty. Now, you must find the actors for this strange, expensive play. You must acquire the pineapples themselves. This is, in itself, a task of staggering difficulty. You cannot simply go to a market and buy seeds. The pineapple, a member of the bromeliad family, is not grown that way. It is grown vegetatively. To grow a new pineapple, you need a piece of an old one. This is a fundamental horticultural fact that makes the entire enterprise exponentially more difficult. You need either the crown, the spiky, leafy top of the fruiter, more desirably, the suckers, which are the small baby plantlets that the mother plant produces around its base after fruiting. Both are rare, and both are astronomically expensive. Your first piece of planting stock comes to you in a somewhat undignified manner. A footman arrives from the great house, his nose wrinkled in disgust. He is carrying, on a silver tray, the crown of the very pineapple the Earl displayed in his library. The fruit itself, you remember, was already succumbing to the long sea journey, its base a soft, fermenting brown. The footman presents the crown to you as if he is handing you a piece of garbage, and in a way he is. The crown is wilted, its lower leaves slimy with the first hint of rot. But to you this is a treasure. This is your first shot. You take the crown to your potting shed. With a small, sharp knife, you perform a kind of surgery. You meticulously trim away the last vestiges of the rotting fruit from the base of the crown, cutting back the flesh until you have only the hard, fibrous core of the leafy top. You peel away the lower, slimy leaves, revealing a ring of small, brown, dormant root nubs. It is a pathetic-looking thing, this salvaged piece of tropical royalty, but it is alive. You plant it carefully in a small clay pot filled with your finest mixture of sandy loam, and you give it a place of honor in the pinery. But one plant is not enough. This is a professional operation, and the Earl wants a rolling supply. You need suckers, and you need a lot of them. You must go to the market, not the local village market, but the shadowy, fiercely competitive international market for exotic plants. You send a message via coach to a specialist nurseryman in London, a man who has contacts in Holland, the epicenter of this new horticultural science. Weeks pass. The cost, when the reply comes, is so high it makes your blood run cold, but you show the letter to the Earl's estate manager, who simply sighs and approves the expense. Finally, a heavy crate arrives on the weekly supply wagon. It is padded with an almost absurd amount of straw and wool batting. You open it with the reverence of a man opening a chest of jewels. Inside, nestled in damp moss, are 20 small, spiky, and frankly, deeply unimpressive-looking plants. They are the suckers. Each one is a bundle of grey-green, razor-edged leaves, no bigger than your hand. They look tough and alien, and each one has cost the Earl enough to pay one of your undergardeners for a month. Now comes the true test of your skill. You cannot simply plant these in a normal garden bed. The secret of the pinery pit, the detail you have studied in your diagrams, is not just the warm soil. The true genius of the system is a technique called plunging. You and your most trusted assistant, a man named Davies, who shares your quiet, obsessive nature, carry the pots into the pinery. The wave of warm, damp, earthy-smelling air greets you like a living thing. You take your trowel. You dig a hole, not in the rich topsoil, but into the top layer of the hot tanner's bark itself. The steam that rises from the hole is fragrant and intense. You carefully plunge the clay pot containing the Earl's crown directly into this hotbed, burying it up to its rim. You do the same with the 20 precious suckers. You plant each one in its own pot, and then you plunge the pots one by one into the steaming bark bed, arranging them in perfect, orderly rows. This is the crucial, counterintuitive secret. The plants are not meant to root in the tan, but to be heated by it. The clay of the pot, an excellent conductor, will draw that steady 80-degree heat from the fermenting furnace below and deliver it directly to the roots, warming the entire soil ball from the bottom up. It is a perfect miniature underfloor heating system for each individual plant. Some horticultural historians debate whether the 18th-century gardener was a scientist or a high-stakes gambler, staking a fortune on a sensory-based guess about invisible forces. As you stand back and look at your work, you feel like both. You have plunged 21 small, priceless plants into the heart of a steaming subterranean fire. The pinery is no longer just a hot, empty room. It is a nursery for kings. The 21 spiky crowns, arranged in their neat rows, look like a small green army, their blades pointed towards the glass roof, ready for a very long, slow battle against the English climate. Your work has now truly begun. You have built the palace. You have lit the fire. You have sourced the royal family. Now all you have to do is wait, and watch, and worry, for the next 2 years. The pinery settles into its own slow rhythm. The initial excitement of construction and planting gives way to the quiet, demanding reality of the long wait. Your life, once dictated by the varied tasks of a sprawling estate garden, now revolves around this single, temperamental glass box and its 21 prickly inhabitants. You have become less a gardener and more a dedicated nursemaid to a family of very demanding, very expensive, and very slow-growing royal infants. The first year stretches before you, an immense quiet ocean of time. Your days begin before dawn. While the rest of the estate sleeps, you walk through the cold, damp, pre-dawn darkness to the pinery. Your first task is always the same, to check the fire. You open the door, and the wave of warm, humid, earthy air greets you, a comforting reassurance that the subterranean engine is still running. You carry a small lantern, its flickering light casting dancing shadows on the fogged-up glass walls. You take your long soil thermometer and plunge it deep into the tan bed in several different places. You hold the lantern close, watching the mercury climb, your breath held until it settles. You are looking for that perfect, steady warmth, not too hot, not too cool. Maintaining this heat is a constant, subtle battle. The biological furnace of the tan and manure is powerful, but it is not static. As the decomposition progresses, the heat output can fluctuate. If it dips too low, the precious tropical roots will chill, and growth will stop entirely. If it spikes too high, you risk literally cooking the plants from the bottom up. Your primary tool for regulation is not adding more fuel, but controlling ventilation. The pinery roof is designed with hinged glass panels, or lights, that can be propped open by varying degrees using notched wooden props. Cracking a light open just an inch can release excess heat and humidity. Closing it tight traps the warmth inside. You learn to read the air, the feel of the humidity on your skin, the amount of condensation on the glass, making tiny adjustments to keep the delicate tropical microclimate in perfect balance. It is a sensory art, a conversation between you, the glass, the fermenting pits, and the indifferent English sky. Next comes the watering. This too is a task fraught with peril. Pineapples, despite their tropical origins, hate having wet feet. Their roots are susceptible to rot in soggy soil, And crucially, you must never allow water to collect in the central cup, formed by the rosette of leaves, especially in cooler weather, as this can lead to crown rot, a swift and fatal disease. You do not simply slosh water from a bucket. You use a watering can with a fine rose, and you water only the soil in the pot, carefully avoiding the center of the plant. And the water itself must be perfect. Cold water, straight from the estate well, would shock the warm roots. So, you keep barrels of water inside the pinery, allowing it to slowly warm to the ambient temperature of the room before you use it. Each plant receives just enough, never too much. It is a precise, almost surgical application of moisture. Then there is the light. You maximize every available photon. You keep the steeply angled glass roof scrupulously clean, sending a boy up with soft cloths and buckets of rainwater whenever the soot from distant chimneys begins to dim its surface. You have whitewashed the tall brick wall at the back of the pinery, turning it into a giant dull reflector that bounces precious light back onto the leaves. You study the way the light moves across the plants during the day, noting which ones receive the most direct sun, rotating the pots occasionally to ensure even growth. And you watch. This is perhaps the hardest part of all. You watch with a patience that borders on the monastic. Pineapple growth is measured not in days or weeks, but in months, even years. From planting a sucker to harvesting a fruit can take anywhere from 18 months to 3 years, depending on the variety and the conditions. This incredibly long gestation period is a key reason for the fruit's extraordinary cost and rarity in your time. You cannot rush it. You can only provide the perfect conditions and wait. You learn the language of the leaves. You watch for the subtle unfurling of a new leaf from the center of the rosette. It emerges tightly furled, a pale green spear, and then slowly opens over days, revealing its sharp serrated edges and its dusty blue-green bloom. You measure progress by these tiny increments. A new leaf every few weeks is a sign of success. You inspect each plant daily, looking for any sign of trouble. You check the undersides of the leaves for the tiny white cottony specks of mealybug or the hard brown shells of scale insects, the two great enemies of the pineapple house. If you find any, you do not reach for harsh poisons. You take a small brush, dipped in soapy water or spirits, and meticulously, painstakingly, you wipe each individual pest away. It is slow, tedious work, but it is the only safe way. The strange, surprising detail is the smell. You expected the overpowering odor of manure and decaying bark to be the defining scent of the pinery. And while that earthy fungal aroma is always present, especially when you stir the beds, it is soon overlaid by something else. The clean, sharp, almost metallic green scent of the pineapple leaves themselves. It is nothing like the sweet perfume of the fruit. It is the smell of tough, resilient, armored life. It is the smell of patience. You spend hours in the pinery, often alone, the silence broken only by the drip of condensation from the roof or the sigh of the wind outside. Some modern psychologists might look back at the life of an 18th century pineapple grower and see a recipe for profound stress or obsessive-compulsive behavior given the stakes and the constant vigilance required. But you find a different quality in the work. The slow rhythm, the intense focus, the quiet observation. It becomes a form of meditation. Your world shrinks to the needs of these 21 plants. Their survival, their slow, incremental growth, becomes the measure of your own success. The first year crawls by. The seasons turn outside the glass walls. Summer brings a stronger, though still unreliable sun, allowing you to ventilate more freely. Autumn brings shorter days and the first bite of frost on the fields outside, forcing you to seal the pinery tight against the cold. Winter is the great enemy, the time of maximum danger still to come. But for now, your plants are alive. The Earl's salvaged crown has rooted and is producing new leaves. The expensive suckers have established themselves, their spiky rosettes slowly widening. They are still small, they are still years away from fulfilling their purpose, but they are growing. You have kept them alive through one cycle of the English seasons. You have nurtured a tiny spark of the tropics through the long, damp quiet of the English year. The gentle, melancholic decline of autumn gives way to the stark, skeletal beauty of winter. The last leaves have fallen from the great oaks in the park, leaving their intricate black branches etched against a sky that is often the color of iron. Frost arrives, not just as a fleeting morning visitor, but as a permanent resident. It coats the fields in a brittle silver sheen, crunches under your boots, and traces intricate, feathery patterns on the outside of the pinery glass, turning your tropical haven into a frosted jewel box. Snow falls, sometimes in gentle, muffling blankets, sometimes driven by a fierce north wind that rattles the glass panes and finds every tiny crack in the structure. The sun, when it appears at all, is a pale, distant disk, low on the horizon, its light offering clarity but almost no warmth. The world outside your glass walls is beautiful, but it is deeply, profoundly hostile to the life within. This is the time of greatest danger. Winter is the siege. You are the commander of a small, fragile fortress, defending a precious tropical treasure against an overwhelming, indifferent enemy. Your vigilance, which was constant before, now becomes obsessive. Sleep becomes a luxury you can rarely afford for more than a few hours at a time. The stakes are simply too high. A single night of neglect, a sudden unexpected plunge in temperature could destroy years of work, ruin his lordship's investment, and potentially cost you your position. The biological furnace beneath the soil, your carefully constructed engine of tan and manure, is put to its ultimate test. The intense cold outside leaches the heat away with alarming speed. The steady warmth you cultivated through the autumn now requires constant, careful management. The process of decomposition naturally slows in the cold, threatening to dampen your subterranean fire. Your first line of defense is conservation. You seal the pinery tight. Every ventilation light is closed fast. You stuff any suspected drafts around the doorframe with scraps of wool and hessian. The air inside grows thick with humidity, dripping constantly from the roof, but trapping every possible degree of warmth is paramount. You find yourself making your rounds not just at dawn and dusk, but in the dead of night. You rise from your cold bed, pull on your thickest coat, light your lantern, and trudge through the silent, frost-covered gardens to the pinery. The crunch of your boots on the frozen ground is the only sound. You enter the pinery, the wave of warm, damp air a shocking contrast to the biting cold outside. You plunge the thermometer into the bed, holding your lantern close, your breath misting in the air, praying the mercury holds steady. But sometimes the biological heat is not enough. During the longest, coldest nights, when the wind howls and the temperature outside plummets far below freezing, you must deploy your secret weapon. This is the pinery's second engine, a more conventional but equally demanding source of heat. Built into the thick brick wall at the back of the pinery is a small cast iron door. This is the mouth of the furnace. Behind the wall is a stokehole, a small sheltered brick enclosure where a coal or wood fire can be kept burning. But crucially, the smoke and heat from this fire do not vent directly into the pinery. That would create the dry, damaging heat you must avoid. Instead, the heat and smoke are channeled into a network of brick-lined flues, like long, hollow tunnels that run underneath the tan pits themselves, embedded in the earth. These flues gently warm the entire foundation of the pinery from below, providing a crucial boost to the biological heat of the tan beds. A dry heat tempered and humidified by the earth and the steaming bark above. On the coldest nights, keeping this furnace fed becomes your primary occupation. You or your trusted assistant, Davies, must sit vigil in the stokehole, feeding logs or shoveling coal into the fire's hungry maw throughout the night. The rhythmic clang of the shovel, the roar of the flames when the door is opened, and the radiating heat become the heartbeat of the pinery's survival. It is exhausting, soot-stained work, performed in the freezing darkness, while the precious plants sleep in their artificial summer just a few feet away. The sheer amount of fuel consumed by these early heating systems was astonishing. Some estate account books from the period show expenditures on coal and wood for the hothouses that rivaled the fuel costs for the main manor house itself. The quest for the pineapple was not just a horticultural challenge, it was an economic black hole, consuming resources at a prodigious rate. Inside the pinery, the battle is less dramatic but equally intense. Your greatest enemy is not just the cold but the damp cold. The high humidity, essential for the plants in warmer times, becomes a deadly liability when temperatures hover near freezing. Condensation running down the inside of the glass can freeze into sheets of ice. A single drop of icy water falling into the delicate central crown of a pineapple plant can cause fatal rot almost overnight. You constantly wipe the inside of the glass with dry cloths, trying to manage the condensation. You watch the plants like a hawk, looking for the faintest darkening at the base of the leaves, the first sign of cold-induced decay. One morning, after a particularly bitter night, you enter the pinery to find disaster. Despite your best efforts, the frost has found a way in. Near one corner, where the wind had driven the cold with particular force, the feathery patterns of ice are not just on the outside of the glass, but have crept inside. The leaves of the two plants closest to that corner are limp, their healthy grey-green color replaced by a sickly, translucent darkness. They have been frostbitten. You touch a leaf, and it is cold and flaccid. Years of work destroyed in a few hours. There is nothing to be done for them. You carefully remove the two pots from the bed, a small funeral procession for his lordship's expensive failures. It is a harsh reminder of the constant, precarious nature of your task. You redouble your efforts. You hang thick woolen blankets, night blinds, inside the glass roof each evening to provide an extra layer of insulation. You ensure the furnace burns hotter, consuming even more precious fuel. You barely sleep, your senses constantly attuned to the howl of the wind, the temperature of the air, the health of your 19 remaining charges. Slowly, agonizingly, the worst of the winter begins to recede. The days, though still cold, grow fractionally longer. The sun, when it appears, has a little more strength. The hardest frosts become less frequent. You have survived the siege. You, your furnace, your steaming pits of manure, and 19 very expensive, very demanding pineapple plants have made it through the dark heart of the English winter. The battle is won, but the war for the fruit is far from over. Spring arrives, not as a sudden explosion of warmth, but as a slow, hesitant softening of the world. The brutal frosts relent, replaced by cool, persistent rain and fleeting moments of watery sunshine. Outside the pinery, the first green shoots of daffodils push through the cold earth, and the bare branches of the trees begin to swell with buds. Inside your glass sanctuary, the change is less dramatic, but equally significant. The constant existential threat of freezing has lifted. You no longer need to feed the furnace through the night. The biological heat from the tan beds, reinvigorated by the slightly warmer ambient temperatures, is once again sufficient. You can allow yourself longer stretches of sleep, though your dawn and dusk rituals of checking the temperature and humidity remain unwavering. Your 19 surviving pineapple plants have weathered the winter well. Their leaves are a healthy, robust grey-green, unmarked by frost or rot. They have grown, slowly but steadily, their rosettes widening, their central leaves reaching ever higher towards the glass roof. They are magnificent specimens, monuments to your skill and dedication. And yet, they are only leaves. 18 months have passed since you plunged those first precious suckers into the steaming tan beds. The plants are mature. They are, by all accounts, ready, but they show no inclination whatsoever to perform the one act for which they were so expensively conceived and so arduously nurtured. They refuse to fruit. His lordship has begun to make inquiries. Polite inquiries, of course, delivered via his estate manager, but the impatience is clear. Carriages have arrived bearing rumours from other great houses, a successful fruiting at Blenheim, a particularly large specimen harvested at Chatsworth. The pineapple race is on, and your Earl is falling behind. The pressure, which eased slightly with the passing of winter, now returns with a new, more focused intensity. You consult your books again, searching for the final, crucial secret. You find references, veiled and often contradictory, to the mysterious art of forcing or checking the plants. It seems that simply providing a perfect, unchanging tropical paradise is not enough. The pineapple, it turns out, needs a shock, a carefully calculated interruption to its comfortable existence to trigger the miraculous transformation from leaf to flower to fruit. This is the most counterintuitive and dangerous part of the entire process. After nearly 2 years spent protecting these plants from the slightest stress, you must now deliberately inflict it. It feels like a betrayal, a violation of the trust you have built with these silent, spiky creatures. And the risks are enormous. Too much stress, or the wrong kind, could kill the plant outright, wasting years of work and a small fortune. Too little, and nothing will happen. It is a terrifying gamble, based on the incomplete knowledge and whispered secrets of your fellow horticultural magicians. The development of these forcing techniques was a closely guarded secret in the 18th century, a form of intellectual property among elite gardeners. While Philip Miller described the basic structures and heating, the precise methods for inducing fruiting were often passed down through apprenticeships, or hinted at in coded language in private letters. Some scholars argue that the true art and mystery of pineapple growing lay not in the technology of the pinery, but in this risky, intuitive manipulation of the plant's life cycle. You decide to begin. You select the 5 largest, most robust-looking plants, the ones whose maturity seems most certain. Your first step is to simulate the dry season of their native lands. You cease watering them almost entirely. Where once you gave them their carefully measured dose of warmed water every few days, you now provide only the barest sip, just enough to prevent the leaves from completely crisping. The rich soil in their pots, usually kept perfectly moist, begins to dry out, shrinking away slightly from the sides of the clay. Simultaneously, you carefully reduce the heat. You increase ventilation, allowing the cooler spring air to circulate more freely within the pinery. You do not let it get cold. Frost would still be fatal, but you allow the steady tropical warmth to drop by 10, perhaps 15 degrees. The air loses its thick, humid quality and becomes drier, cooler. This phase is agony for you. Every instinct screams at you to water the plants, to close the vents, to restore the comforting warmth. You watch the leaves minute by minute, hour by hour, looking for the first signs of dangerous wilting or chilling. The plants seem to shrink into themselves, their vibrant color dulling slightly. They look unhappy. You are deliberately making them suffer, and it feels like a terrible sin against nature. You last through this cool, dry period for 2 weeks, a fortnight that stretches into an eternity of anxiety. Then comes the second, more dramatic shock. You must simulate the sudden, violent return of the tropical rainy season. You reverse the process entirely, and with a speed that feels reckless. You seal the pinery tight once more, closing every vent. You instruct Davies to rebuild the furnace fire, not just for nighttime warmth, but to run hot day and night, channeling a surge of dry heat through the underfloor flues. You take your sharpest, longest pitchfork and you plunge it deep into the tan beds around the chosen pots, heaving and turning the compacted bark. This introduces fresh air into the heart of the biological furnace, reigniting the decomposition process, causing the temperature of the beds to spike upwards rapidly. Steam rises visibly from the disturbed tan. Finally, you water. You do not just give a gentle sip. You flood the pots with copious amounts of warmed water, soaking the dry soil, drenching the roots. You splash water onto the hot flues built into the back wall, creating billows of steam that fill the pinery with an almost suffocating humidity. Within hours, you have transformed the environment from cool and dry to intensely hot and saturatingly wet. You stand back, breathing heavily in the thick tropical air, your heart pounding. You have done it. You have subjected the 5 chosen plants to the most extreme environmental violence you can devise. You have shocked their systems to the core. Now, there is nothing left to do but wait, and pray that you have woken the king within rather than killed him. You return the pinery to its normal, stable warmth and humidity. You resume your careful watering, and you watch. You watch the very center of each of the 5 stressed plants, the tight rosette where new leaves normally emerge. You are looking for something different now, not a leaf, but a sign of transformation. Days pass, a week, nothing. The plants seem to be recovering from their ordeal, their color improving, but there is no sign of the miracle you prayed for. Your stomach tightens with the familiar dread of failure. Perhaps you were too harsh. Perhaps you waited too long. And then, one misty morning, as you perform your daily inspection, you see it. In the very heart of one of the largest plants, nestled deep within the V-shape of the newest leaves, is a tiny nubbin of color. It is no bigger than your thumbnail. It is not the pale green of a new leaf. It is a deep, jewel-like ruby red, tightly closed, almost like a tiny armored pine cone. It is the flower bud, the crown. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. It has worked. The gamble has paid off. You have broken the spell. You have convinced the king it is time to emerge. The appearance of that first, tiny ruby-red bud sends a quiet thrill through your veins. The gamble has paid off. The shock you administered has awakened the life within. Over the next few days, you watch with obsessive attention as similar buds emerge, one by one, from the hearts of the other 4 plants you subjected to the forcing technique. 5 successes. Your reputation is secure, for now. But the journey is far from over. This is merely the promise of a fruit, the first fragile whisper of the eventual prize. The final stage, the slow swelling and ripening, will be a nerve-wracking marathon of patience and protection. The tiny bud, often called the king or the crown even at this early stage, begins its slow ascent. It sits atop a sturdy stalk that gradually elongates, pushing the nascent fruit up above the protective rosette of leaves. As it rises, the bud slowly begins to unfurl. And here, a surprising and fleeting beauty is revealed. What emerges are not scales, but tiny individual flowers. Dozens of them, packed tightly together in a spiral pattern. Each flower is small, no bigger than your little fingernail, with delicate petals of a startling, beautiful violet-blue color. They open sequentially, a few at a time, starting from the base of the bud and spiraling upwards. Each flower lives for only a single day before fading. The pinery, for a brief period, is filled with these tiny, ephemeral sparks of blue, a secret beauty hidden within the heart of this strange, armored plant. Horticultural records from the era often gloss over this flowering stage, focusing solely on the fruit, but it's a reminder that even this symbol of artificial triumph is still rooted in the delicate cycles of nature. Once the last blue flower has faded, the structure begins its slow transformation into the fruit you recognize. The individual flower bases fuse together and begin to swell. The sharp, protective bracts beneath each flower develop into the familiar hexagonal scales, or eyes, that form the pineapple's characteristic rind. The entire structure starts to expand, slowly, almost imperceptibly, day by day, week by week. Your vigilance shifts its focus. While maintaining the perfect heat and humidity of the pinery remains crucial, your attention is now laser-focused on these 5 developing fruits. They are the jewels in the crown, and they are incredibly vulnerable. Watering becomes even more critical. The swelling fruit requires consistent moisture, but the danger of crown rot, should water collect at its base or top, is ever present. You water the soil diligently, checking its dampness by touch, ensuring the roots have what they need to fuel the fruit's expansion. Pest control becomes a source of constant anxiety. A mealybug infestation, previously a mere nuisance on the leaves, could now find its way into the developing fruit, scarring its appearance and potentially causing it to rot from within. You inspect the base of each fruit daily, your eye sharp for any sign of the white cottony pests. You continue your meticulous hand cleaning, your brush now an instrument of royal protection. As the fruits grow heavier, a new mechanical challenge emerges. The stalk supporting the pineapple, while sturdy, was not designed by nature to hold such a large, heavy object for so long in the still, windless air of a hothouse. There is a real danger of the stalk snapping or the entire plant simply toppling over under the weight. You must provide support. You carefully insert thin, strong bamboo stakes into the pot beside each fruiting plant. Using soft strips of woolen cloth, nothing that could bruise the precious skin, you create gentle slings or ties that cradle the swelling fruit, taking some of the strain off the stalk. Your pineapples now sit enthroned, supported by their own little scaffolding. The weeks turn into months. Summer arrives outside, bringing its longer days and stronger sun. This is beneficial, providing more light and natural warmth, reducing the need for constant vigilance over the heating system. But it also brings new dangers. Intense, direct summer sunlight, magnified by the glass roof, can scorch the delicate skin of the ripening fruit, creating unsightly brown patches. You must now learn the art of shading. On the brightest days, you drape thin muslin cloths, like bridal veils, over sections of the glass roof, diffusing the harshest rays, protecting your charges from sunburn. The transformation of the fruit is a slow, subtle miracle. The color begins to change, shifting from a deep, leafy green to a warmer bronze, then gradually, starting from the base and moving upwards, to a rich golden yellow. The scales, once tightly closed, flatten and spread slightly, their edges turning a brownish red. And the scent begins to emerge. At first it is just a faint green freshness. Then, as the sugars develop, it deepens, becoming richer, sweeter. Soon the entire pinery is filled with that intoxicating perfume you first encountered in the Earl's library, a smell of pure, concentrated sunshine and exotic sweetness that clings to your clothes and hair. Some historical accounts differ wildly on how long the ripening process took within these artificial environments, anywhere from 4 to 8 months from the appearance of the flower bud. This variation likely reflects differences in heating technology, plant varieties, and the gardener's skill in managing the delicate final stages. Your 5 fruits seem to be progressing steadily, each at its own slightly different pace. This is the final agonizing stretch. The fruits are large now, heavy and gloriously golden. They look perfect. The temptation to harvest them is immense. His lordship has visited the pinery several times, his initial impatience replaced by a childlike wonder. His fingers gently tracing the rough scales, his nose filled with the magnificent scent. But you know you must wait for the perfect moment. Harvest too early and the flavor will be sharp and acidic, lacking the deep sweetness his lordship expects. Harvest too late and the fruit will begin to ferment from within, that familiar tang of decay ruining the prize. You learn to read the final signs. You watch for the subtle shift in the color of the small leaves surrounding the base of the fruit. They should begin to yellow slightly. You gently tap the fruit, listening for a dull, solid sound, not a hollow one. And you trust your nose. The perfume should reach a peak of intensity, a perfect balance between overwhelming sweetness and a fresh, vibrant tang. One late summer morning, you enter the pinery and you know. One of the 5 fruits, the largest, the one grown from the Earl's original salvaged crown, is ready. It hangs in its woolen sling, a perfect orb of golden bronze, its crown of leaves a deep, healthy green. The air around it is thick with the promise of unimaginable sweetness. After nearly 2 years of constant vigilance, of battling cold and pests, of mastering the strange alchemy of heat and decay, the moment has finally arrived. Your impossible task is nearly complete. The king is ready to be harvested. The harvesting of the pineapple is not a casual act. It is a ceremony, performed with the gravity and precision of a royal presentation. You do not simply walk in and twist the fruit from its stalk. This moment is the culmination of 2 years of relentless effort, a victory against the odds and a testament to your mastery. You summon Davies, your faithful assistant, the only other person who truly understands the weight of this achievement. You also send word to the great house. His lordship must be informed. You select your sharpest, finest pruning knife. its blade honed to a razor's edge. You carry a velvet cushion, borrowed from one of the lesser drawing rooms, its deep crimson nap a suitably regal resting place for the prize. You approach the chosen plant. The fruit hangs heavy in its sling, a perfect specimen, glowing with a deep, warm gold in the humid air of the pinery. Its scent is almost overwhelming now, a thick, sweet perfume that speaks of distant shores and impossible sunshine. With Davies steadying the plant, you make the cut. You sever the thick stalk just below the base of the fruit with a single clean slice. The connection is broken. The fruit is free. You carefully lift the heavy pineapple, its rough, spiky skin surprisingly warm to the touch. It weighs perhaps 5 or 6 pounds, a dense package of sweetness and wealth. You gently place it upon the velvet cushion. It looks absurdly, magnificently regal, a true king on his throne. Davies nods, his weathered face breaking into a rare, wide smile. You allow yourself a small, tight smile in return. You have done it. Now comes the procession. You carry the cushion bearing the pineapple out of the humid warmth of the pinery and into the cool, grey English air. Davies walks ahead of you, clearing the path. You walk slowly, deliberately, across the gravel pathways, through the rose garden, past the immaculate lawns, towards the imposing stone facade of the great house. Servants peer from windows, their faces filled with curiosity. Word has spread. The miracle has occurred. You are met at the main entrance not by a footman, but by the Earl himself. His eyes are fixed on the fruit, his expression one of pure, unadulterated triumph. He does not reach for it. He simply nods, a gesture of profound satisfaction. "Mr. Harkness," he says, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Magnificent, truly magnificent." The pineapple is carried, still on its cushion, into the grand dining room and placed in the center of the long, polished mahogany table. It will be the centerpiece of tonight's banquet, a silent declaration of the Earl's wealth, sophistication, and his gardener's extraordinary skill. And here lies the final surprising twist in the pineapple's 18th century story. You expect, after all this effort, that the fruit will now be sliced and eagerly consumed by the Earl and his guests, its legendary flavor finally savored. But often, this was not the case. The fruit was simply too valuable, too potent a symbol to be destroyed by mere eating, especially on its first appearance. Historical accounts suggest that a particularly fine house-grown pineapple might be displayed at multiple dinner parties, night after night. It would be carefully carried back to the pinery after each event to preserve its freshness in the warm, humid air, then brought out again the next evening. Its presence alone was the statement. Only when it began to show the very first signs of overripeness, that faint, sharp tang beneath the sweetness, would the Earl finally decree that it was time to actually eat it. And even then, it would be a ceremonial slicing, each precious golden slice distributed like a rare jewel among the most honored guests. Your 2 years of work might culminate in a single, fleeting taste for a handful of people. Your work, however, is not quite done. After the banquet, after the pineapple has performed its symbolic duty, it is returned to you. Not the whole fruit, perhaps. Maybe the Earl has finally decided to taste his triumph. But you are given back the most important part, the crown. And attached to the base of the fruit, where it joined the stalk, you find what you have been waiting for. Several small new slips, or nibs, tiny plantlets emerging from beneath the lowest scales. These, along with the crown, are the future. They are the next generation. You carefully trim them, just as you did with the Earl's first rotting crown. You plant them in small pots filled with your best sandy loam. You take them into the pinery, and you plunge them into the warm, waiting tan bed. The cycle begins anew. The heat from the decomposing bark warms the new roots. The pale English sun filters through the glass. You check the temperature, manage the ventilation, water sparingly, watch for pests. You settle back into the slow, patient rhythm of the work. You have 19 plants, 5 of which have now fruited. You have perhaps a dozen new crowns and slips potted and plunged. Your pineapple dynasty is established. You stand in the pinery in the quiet of the late afternoon. The remaining 4 ripe pineapples fill the air with their perfume, waiting for their own ceremonial harvest. The younger plants continue their slow, imperceptible growth. Outside, the English weather does its worst, but inside your small glass palace, powered by the secret fire of decay, you have created a pocket of eternal summer. You are no longer just a gardener. You are a master of time, a ruler of seasons, a quiet king in your own small, fragrant, and surprisingly complex world. The pineapple has been harvested. The great banquet is over. The symbol has performed its duty, and the cycle begins again in the warm, humid silence of the pinery. Your own journey is complete. It is time to let the images of this slow, patient, and surprisingly fragrant world begin to fade. The feeling of damp soil under your fingernails, the steamy wave of heat from the tan beds, the meticulous cleaning of a single leaf, the breathless moment of watching a flower bud emerge, the final, triumphant weight of the golden fruit on its velvet cushion. These are just echoes now, softening at the edges, dissolving into the peaceful darkness of your room. The story is told. The impossible fruit has been grown. The climate has been conquered. The patient work is done. All that is left is the deep, quiet satisfaction that comes after a long and demanding task is brought to its sweet conclusion. Let the warmth of the pinery, the steady heat from that hidden fire, settle over you. Feel your body grow heavy and relaxed, your breathing slow and easy. There is nothing left to do now, only rest. Sleep well. Good night.